Now I've got the host of Pod Save America and Pod Save the World, Tommy Vietor. Tommy, thanks for coming on.
Brian, great to see you. Also the co-host of Liberal Tears, the show we
That's
do
right.
together on YouTube, for God's sake.
Right.
But one of the most fun things I get to do every couple of weeks.
That's right. That's right. We'll talk about that a little bit later at the end here. But
Oh,
first,
yeah.
let's start with the bad stuff and then end with the good stuff. So
Okay.
we'll start with the Trump of it all here. Just recently, Judge Chutkin, who's overseeing the election theft case, the federal case, she's considering Trump's trial date now. So she told his team that the date would be impacted based on whether there's any more retaliatory claims or threats coming from anybody in the case, meaning that basically she's putting the ball in Trump's court. If he attacks a witness, then he gets an earlier trial date, and that's the last thing he wants, but it'll be his fault. Do you think that he'll be able to control himself?
Does it feel like a parent be like, look, if you're really nice to your sister, you can stay up and watch the end of the basketball game, but only if you're
Yeah.
good. No, I don't expect him to exert any self-control. I do love her throwing it back in his court and saying, listen, sir, all you have to do here is not retaliate and attack, potential witnesses in this case, and you can get what you want, but I don't think he'll be able to do it.
I'm sure that you've seen his team's defenses in the media now that this is an attack on his free speech rights, that this is all election interference, on and on. And I know all of this is kind of martyrdom for the base, and that's what they want. They want to feel like victims, and that's what Trump does best. But how do you think all of this stuff is landing with the independents who will actually decide the outcome of this election?
Yeah, I mean, look, I do think it's fair to say there are novel free speech issues when it comes to indicting a former president of the United States who is running again, and scoping what he is able to say creates some challenges. But the idea that creating a fake slate of electors is somehow free speech as opposed to a sweeping 7-state conspiracy to steal an election, I would quibble with that a little bit. I think that his base, there are people who have said on the record and will say again that every time he gets indicted, they like him even more. I think more broadly, what's likely to happen is these cases will continue to be in the news. They will blot out all other narratives about Trump and all other stories and all of his primary opponents. And I don't think swing voters are going to like hearing about January 6th again. I don't think they're going to like the idea of a president of the United States who could go to jail. So I just can't imagine this helps him with swing voters.
Even with that said, if he was trying to get this out of the ether, he might be trying to talk about something different. But even when he has the opportunity to speak for himself, when he has the microphone, he does the exact same thing. It's just all complaining about Jack Smith and Fani Willis and Judge Chutkin and just everybody involved in these prosecutions. So even when he has the opportunity to control the narrative, he delves into the same exact stuff that ultimately isn't going to help him in the end.
Yeah, I mean, Brian, look, there's some parts of Trump's appeal that I can understand. If you watch a Trump rally as compared to an Asa Hutchinson rally, you're probably going to see people having more fun at the Trump rally. They feel like they're part of a team, you know what I mean? Like he's making them laugh. But one thing I can't understand about his appeal is the guy just bitches and moans all day long. It's all grievance. It's all about whining about his treatment. I don't get how voters don't get sick of that. I don't get how his base is still okay with hearing him whine about stuff all day long.
How do you reconcile those things? Because on one hand, you have this party that beats its chest for being alphas, right? Like that's the whole thing. It's like where men know how to be men and all that bullshit. But at the same time, the entire strategy is predicated completely on just being professional victims and perpetual victims.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, a lot of his voters think, you know what? He hates the people I hate. You know what I mean? The people who I feel like look down on me, the elites, the liberals, the people in big cities. He wants to punish them as much as I want to punish them. And so they go along for the ride because, for a shared hatred of people like me, frankly.
Yeah, yeah.
I am annoying, so I apologize.
How should the White House be handling Trump's prosecution? Because I understand that Joe Biden himself has to be careful not to validate Trump's exact arguments that he is prosecuting his political opponent, which is, of course, not true. But also, this is a massive, massive weakness and liability that should absolutely be exploited. And yeah, how does the White House handle that?
Yeah, I mean, it's complicated. Like these are uncharted waters. I think ultimately, the president, the White House has to be mindful of the rule of law that we are all innocent until we're proven guilty, and that there is a clear risk of a perception that the Department of Justice is targeting one of Joe Biden's political opponents. Obviously, that is not true. You know, I mean, again, Trump always makes himself the victim. How dare they prosecute me? As if, as if Joe Biden forced him to steal a bunch of classified information and
Right.
like stuff it in his bathroom in Mar-a-Lago.
As if this is all just happening like in a vacuum, irrespective of what Trump actually did to warrant all of it.
Yeah. How dare you react to my actions is essentially his take. But I do think the White House, the Biden campaign, they really can't touch this. I think that these stories, these trials will be covered by every news outlet all day, every day. And I think people will learn about what's going on. And if I were Joe Biden, I wouldn't want to be the messenger there.
What should they do in terms of messaging? Like what really should they be sending out anybody? Should they just completely leave this thing alone? Like I said before, I mean, it's very rare, bordering on never, that the White House is given an opportunity where the chief political rival is like enmeshed in four different criminal indictments.
I think there's just a risk that like if, the fourth ranking spokesman in Wisconsin on the Biden campaign, if they say something about the indictments that sounds like they're leaning into this, the Trump campaign will lift it up and
Right.
demagogue it
Fox
and say,
News will find it. They'll make him the face of all things Biden White House, and then it'll be too late.
Exactly. So I would want to make a broader argument about just how extreme the MAGA base is, just how extreme Trump is. You've seen the enormous success Democrats have had in talking about abortion rights, for example. Just a couple of days ago, voters in Ohio overwhelmingly voted to shut down an effort to make it harder to enshrine abortion rights into Ohio's constitution. So I would focus on issues like that, and then also be talking about Joe Biden's record.
Pivoting to Biden world now, there has been reporting that they see a broader path to the presidency through states that might have otherwise been written off thanks to the issue of abortion. And that's including Ohio, which you just mentioned, where abortion will now be on the ballot, and a state like North Carolina, where there's a 12-week abortion ban in place and which Biden only lost by 1 point in 2020. Is this a smart move, or are we falling into the same trap that we always fall into, where we just keep chasing after states that are just not ours to win anymore?
Brian, it's a great question. I think at this point in a campaign, you want to signal to everyone that you're going to have as wide a playing field as humanly possible. You might as well say to the press, we're going to compete in all 50 states. We're going to be up on the air in Alabama, right? Because part of it is signaling to your donors that you feel like you're approaching the campaign from a place of strength, and also signaling to your opponent that they're going to have to spend money in a lot of places. At the end of the day, do I think that we are going to be watching a competitive presidential race in Ohio? Probably not. But you're going to have a very competitive Senate race where for Sherrod Brown trying to get reelected, you will likely have a ballot initiative to enshrine abortion rights into Ohio's constitution. So that could change the calculus in ways that I'm just not seeing at the moment. I do hope they at least try to compete in states like North Carolina. The challenge is ultimately it'll come down to resource allocation. If you have the money to go on TV in North Carolina, you should do so. But I think I read somewhere that North Carolina was the fourth most expensive state in terms of Joe Biden's spend in the last 6 months of the 2020 campaign. So, you're going to run out of money eventually.
Are there any dark horse states that you do think are really worth investing in? I mean, it may be like a state like North Carolina, but is there any state that may kind of be written off by the general pundit class that you think really still is ours to take?
Great question. I mean, if you were to say gun to your head, which state do you think is on the table that might not have been last time? I think North Carolina would probably be my first one. There are a couple states that I think are probably lost causes, but no one's going to be willing to admit it yet, like Florida. Florida is incredibly expensive. It's been trending away from...
I feel like people are willing to admit that Florida may just be a lost cause.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's been trending against us for a long time. The voter registration
Florida
numbers have gotten worse and worse.
The bane of the Democrats' existence since 2000. I think it's
we're
ready to put that one to bed.
Yeah, ever since the word hanging Chad came into our lexicon, Florida's been a real problem.
The White House is making a really concerted effort right now to promote Bidenomics, and they're doing it at a time where we've got the highest GDP of all G7 countries. Inflation is the lowest of all G7 countries. Manufacturing right now is booming. Real wages are outpacing inflation for the first time. How do you think the White House is doing on this push, and what could they be doing better?
Look, I mean, there's obviously a lot of work to be done. I mean, I don't think there's no way they're looking at their polling currently and thinking this is sufficient, that we've made the case. I think that you're starting to see Joe Biden hit the road again. You're seeing lots of surrogates fan out to try to sell some of his accomplishments around the 1-year anniversary of the CHIPS Act or the IRA or some of the big legislative accomplishments he's had. Look, it's an uphill slog because it's hard to get these things covered, these sort of substantive meat and potato stories covered on any day. It gets even harder when all the press corps wants to ask about is Donald Trump and whatever he was up to that hour. So, it's going to be really difficult, but they should keep trying.
Can you talk about your time in the Obama White House, which was notorious for not owning its accomplishments?
What always happens is you'll get something done. You'll assume voters are going to like it. And then the president of the United States will look at a poll in a month and be like, why am I not getting credit for this? And then a bunch of really smart senior people get in a room and they point the finger at the communications team and they blame us. They're like, obviously we're not selling this right. Obviously it's a communications problem. I mean, I think what happened during the Obama era was we went into an enormous deep recession and it took a lot longer to climb out of it than anyone had hoped. And maybe we needed a bigger stimulus to move that process faster. So it's really hard to convince voters that actually things are better for you than you think. I think what Joe Biden can do is stack up all the things they accomplished, like the IRA, the COVID recovery money, the CHIPS Act. Like, it's a really impressive set of legislative wins, and tell people that, so that, because I think a lot of voters have no idea what happens in Washington on a regular basis. What gets even harder these days, though, is the people you need to reach aren't listening to Pod Save America or watching your shows, right? There are people that maybe aren't reading the news, that aren't watching, network news, and getting to them, getting information to them often takes more of a paid media strategy than, just getting out to Sandusky, Ohio and doing the local news.
So I guess how does Biden reconcile this then? Because like you said, you don't want to tell people how they're feeling, and you have to be, I guess, cognizant of the fact that not everybody is doing well. And there still are, because of income inequality in this country, which is so deep-seated and long-standing, you can't just say, because of these few macroeconomic factors, everything is great and you're actually doing great. So I guess how do you most effectively toe this line between selling these accomplishments while also being careful that you don't tell people that things are better than they know they are?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think,
or is it that you just be careful, that you just toe that line and acknowledge the respect for one side while touting the accomplishments on the other?
Look, I think you hit on the challenge. I think you have to tell people what you did, tell them what the impact was, but always make clear that you think that there's much more work to do. And then you talk to them about what the obstacles are to that additional work, right? It's like we wanted to raise the national minimum wage to $15 an hour, but Republicans wouldn't let us do it. That's what I'm still fighting for. Talking about Medicare expansion across every state, talking about all the things they want to do to make housing more affordable and how Republicans are blocking those efforts. Always, elections are ultimately a choice between two sometimes imperfect options. And I think once voters see, okay, well, I might think Joe Biden's a little bit too old, but, Donald Trump's a crazy extremist who sent a horde of lunatics to attack the Capitol on January 6th. So I'm going to go with Joe Biden. And part of the polling you see when people are asked about issues like the economy or Joe Biden on foreign policy, a lot of it is just tracking his general approval rating, and maybe they're just kind of annoyed at the world anyway, or they think he's a little too old, and that kind of bleeds into the numbers under the hood when it comes to sort of economic policy views, when in fact it's just sort of, people are they're not sure they love the guy right now, and maybe they will later.
Tommy, we host a series that you mentioned before called Liberal Tears on the Pod Save America YouTube channel. Can you talk a little bit about the punishment situation and maybe talk about what's been your favorite punishment so far?
Am I allowed to reveal the one that isn't out yet? I guess we probably have to hold that one. Listen, yeah. So Brian and I do this very fun show called Liberal Tears on YouTube. We draft things we have an episode that'll come out on August 23rd or so about ranking some of the most impactful debate moments in presidential history that we're pegging to the Republican primary debate happening that day. the viewers then get to look at both of our set of picks and vote on who they think won. And now we've, implemented a series of sadistic punishments, which included Brian getting a specially made Mike Pence tattoo that he made me put on my lower back as a tramp stamp and wear for 3 or 4 days when my wife's parents were visiting. And then I had a trip to New York. I was literally in this tiny hotel gym in New York, and I couldn't put my arms over my head because I was lifting my shirt up, and it just said Mike Pence 2024 all across the back. So you're a sick fuck is what I think your audience needs to know.
So is that your favorite one?
I mean, that was by far the best punishment. I mean, there's just no question about it.
Yeah, we got to ramp up. We got to ramp up your punishments. Your punishments. The first punishment was that you ever doled out was making me eat. I mean, a la Ron DeSantis's pudding fingers, whole thing. You made me eat pudding with my fingers. That was the first punishment. I think you also had me wear a bunny suit in the vein of John Kerry wearing that sperm suit way back when.
Yeah.
And what was the other? Oh, you made me eat ketchup flavored Doritos. For anybody watching, my biggest aversion in the world is ketchup. The smell of ketchup will make me nauseous. The thought of ketchup will make me nauseous. And so I put a hard line when we started this series that I would not touch ketchup, that ketchup could not be a punishment. And so this asshole was like, don't worry, we won't make you eat ketchup, but we have ketchup flavored Doritos that I had to eat.
Well, and the best part about that is I didn't realize that Brian has a really bad allergy to milk. And in Doritos, there are a lot of milk-based products because I guess the cheese or whatever. And so the look on your face when we busted out those Doritos was
it was mostly ketchup, but then also the prospect of my imminent demise. I literally haven't eaten a Dorito since I was probably 14 years old. And for that exact
tough,
reason.
Man.
Elijah would kill me if I didn't ask this. So what is Friends of the Pod?
Friends of the Pod is our subscription community. If you go to crooked.com/friends, you can join. It's very fun. You can get access to the Discord, so you don't have to watch these debates or frankly, read the news alone. There's people just kind of chatting all day long, including me, John, and John. You get bonus content. You get ad-free shows if you want. So it's a lot of fun. Crooked.com/friends. Check it out.
Definitely check it out. Also, of course, check out Pod Save America and Pod Save the World. Wherever you get podcasts, check out Pod Save America's YouTube channel to see me and Tommy host our show, Liberal Tears. Tommy, thanks so much for taking the time, man.
Thanks, Brian. Great to see you.